We got to make furniture for the now King of England. We got to go to number 10 Downing Street and present to the Prime Minister. So we got to a point in my journey where it was like, oh, you've done so much in such a short amount of time. But I wasn't necessarily happy.
Hi everyone, welcome to another amazing and beautiful episode of the Cafe One Pod. As usual, we're bringing everything fun, everything refreshing, productivity hacks, community discussions to your screen or to your ears, depending on where you're listening to us from. Today we have an amazing guest. As always, I promised you guys that we're always going to be bringing a guest on the pod, and I've not failed you, and I hope I don't. Okay, so today we have the amazing Demi from Majeurs. Welcome, Demi, to the Cafe One podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome. So let's start lightly. Let's just know a little bit more about Demi. Who is Demi? What's life like for her? What does she do? What does she do for work and for fun? What does she enjoy pretty much? What are your hobbies? What are your pet peeves? Let's just know a little bit more about Demi.
Thank you, Favor. Hi guys, I'm Demi Samande, founder of Majeurs Holdings. I am a furniture enthusiast, a manufacturer at heart. I've been manufacturing now for the past 14, 15 years of my entire life. Originally, I started off in architecture and then deviated when the opportunity sort of rose into manufacturing. So I've been in Nigeria now for the last 8 years, building my manufacturing company. We've established a training academy as a result of that. And yes, I'm basically doing all things manufacturing. I'm a first-time author. I'm just about to release my very first book.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Which is focused on manufacturing on the continent and really just documenting my process, my journey thus far, and hope to sort of inspire other young people to take on manufacturing in Africa and on the continent as a challenge and basically find solutions. What do I do for fun? I run a business. My business is fun. I build things. I thoroughly enjoy that process. I hang out with my friends, my family. I'm a big person on quality time with those that you love as a way of sort of offsetting and balancing the world of business. But ultimately, I guess I'm just an all-round entrepreneur, just trying to figure it out like the rest of you.
Amazing. So there are two things from what you said that I want to ask questions about, but let me start from the easier one. The easier one is, why manufacturing? How did that happen? What was the journey? What was the process like?
I was a restless child, the one that would sort of go around the house and try and figure out how things work, take things apart just so I can understand how they came to be. And luckily for me, my parents didn't have a problem with that. They allowed me to sort of explore. And through my exploration, I found a deep desire to build things from nothing. So architecture was a natural sort of decision for me. Go and build things. My father's a civil engineer, so looking at his drawings growing up and how he built things and engineering, I just grew a deep fascination for that process, and I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah. Then about your book, I think it's really amazing that you're documenting this process, because I strongly believe, I may be wrong, but I really believe that on this part of the world, in this continent, we have a data problem. You don't really see a lot of information about builders. You just see results, and we're not able to, tell stories in a straight line, because there's no data from the onset that, when I started this was how many naira I had, and I was able to exit by such and such amount under this period of time. It's usually just they tell it like a tale instead of like actual. I don't know how to describe it, but for instance, if you want to find out how, say, a Facebook got their first 1,000 users, the information is there, there's data. But if you go and you want to ask how maybe a business on Instagram, for instance, grew to 1,000 followers, they may not remember, because like at that point they were not really focused on, oh, I'm documenting this journey. There's hardly any data about it. So I'm really impressed that you've brought out, you've figured that out, and you're making sure that you're going to write a book and you're going to document manufacturing in this continent. I think that is information that we absolutely need. So well done. I'm really, really happy to hear this, and I hope that I get to read the book when it's out. When is it out, by the way?
It's actually out already on pre-order. So you can order it now on all your major book platforms, Amazon, anywhere you like to buy your books. The physical books will be in distribution by December 2nd.
Okay.
So we actually have a launch event in the new year to sort of delve a little bit into my journey and the book itself. So you're more than welcome to come to the event.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to host a podcast. You get free stuff.
Well, you got to pay for the book.
Definitely.
But just going back on your comment about documenting the process. So I'm obviously a little bit privileged. I've come from an environment where things are documented, and I've lived that entire that life. So coming into an environment like Nigeria and noticing immediately that, yes, I want to come here and explore the idea of doing business, I had to do feasibility studies. And one of the things that I discovered very early in my journey was that there wasn't enough information. So I started documenting. So it was a need for me to basically do precisely what it was that I needed at the time, which is document my process. So over the last 8 years of this journey, you can go to my YouTube channel. I've literally got videos from the very first day I landed in Nigeria and sort of my day-to-day in business. I also have a podcast where I invite guests and I sit down.
Nice.
Yes. And I sit down and I talk to them about their own journeys. So documenting people's journey as well as my own, I couldn't really emphasize how critical that is, because I think, and it's really weird because when I was sort of sort of going through my book process, and a very hard process, I must add. It's not easy at all, especially for a first timer. Was that I appreciated a lot of the documentation that I already done, because I was able to go back, right? I was able to revisit a lot of the podcasts, a lot of the conversations that I've had in the past that I've literally recorded. I was able to revisit them and really pick out, the nuggets that were given to me in those moments. And also just to be able to look back on my own journey and be like, wow, we've gone quite a long way. Because when you're amidst the process, it's very difficult to see how far you've come. I think every entrepreneur can probably relate to that. Sometimes you're so stuck in the process and the journey that you forget to look up and you don't realize that you've left quite a bit of trail behind you. So for me, I recognized very early that I needed to do that. And that has been very beneficial in writing the book, right? Because I really want to share with people, the art of what it is that I do, the art of business itself. And, nothing happens by mistake, right? These are very thought out steps, very intentional steps that, you have to take along the way. And even when you make mistakes, it's always helpful to be able to track what it is that you've done. So preparing for my book, I did a video the other day and I was saying to people that so often as entrepreneurs, when we look to other people's stories and we try to pick out the nuggets and we even read their books, a lot of the time there's a lot of missing chapters. Right. And I think this is what you're basically trying to describe, that you're not able to really put a finger on what it is that has allowed this person to either succeed or fail because you're not able to really track their steps. Right. So there are a lot of the missing chapters. And this is literally the reason why I wrote the book. I'm not at the end of my journey. And I think so often many of us assume that the story is only worthwhile telling at the end, which is the point when you've reached success, right? And it's not, because I think every stage of your process as entrepreneur is a valid stage in your journey. So this is sort of what I will call my first book, as my sort of my work in progress, right? My journey in the moment. It's not the first book I'm ever going to write. It's I'm going to do many more books, God willing, after this. But I hope that in telling my story, you're able to track my process and really just don't listen to what I'm saying, but actually follow what I'm doing and learn from the things that I've actually done. And I really hope that the book is able to serve people in that way.
That's amazing. I like how you said it. Instead of just listening, actually follow the process, because it's very easy to get swarmed with words. It's very easy. You forget the doing and you just keep listening. Listening is nice, but the real value comes when you actually put stuff into action. When things are moving, that's when there's real value. So we've spoken a lot about manufacturing, but I want you to tell us what you manufacture and how that is for you. What would you describe your business as? Would you call it a luxury company? Would you call it a startup? Would you just call it a business? How would you describe it?
I've actually described my business as a startup for the last 14 years, and many people don't actually understand that, because I think I'm always sort of evolving, always learning. And I've had to reinvent myself several times over. And that's mainly the reason why I refer to myself as a startup. But in all reality, I've garnished 14 years of experience, right? And I don't think that can really be underestimated. 14 years of doing. And, what I do is I make furniture. I'm a manufacturer. I design a chair and I build it. Or you design a chair, you bring it to me and I build it for you and I bring it to life. That's ultimately all I do. I'm a maker at heart, right? And I think that's what architecture has really afforded me. The sort of design and build process. There's a certain discipline that it has taught me that I have benefited and I continue to benefit from in what I do day to day. So in essence, you can call me a carpenter, you can call me a maker, you can call me a manufacturer. And I think for me, my core skill really is just building things from nothing. And that can sort of evolve through furniture, through any form of design, through, just creating, through my podcast, through my conversations. It's kind of the core of who I am in everything that I do.
So building this manufacturing business, you said you've been back in Nigeria for 8 years. Did you start in Nigeria or did you start before then move?
No, I've been raised in the UK my entire life. Me deciding to come to Nigeria was just an idea that somebody gave me, and I listened, right? My brother-in-law sort of saw me struggling in the UK, trying to define what my company is, because we were making furniture there. My genesis story is restoration. So I started off restoring antique furniture for, VVIPs, as you sort of refer to them in the UK. And, I got into a stage in my career, we got a lot of sort of attention in the media. We got to make furniture for the now King of England. We got to go to number 10 Downing Street and present to the Prime Minister. So we got to a point in my journey where it was like, oh, you've done so much in such a short amount of time. But I wasn't necessarily happy because I felt that I didn't really belong in the UK. It's freezing. I'm a warm weather child, right? I like to be in heat. So how I survived 30 years in the UK, I don't know. But I was just at a point in my career when I was really looking for something different, and I just wasn't satisfied anymore. And he just said to me, with all this stuff that you're going on, I think I was in the middle of a breakup at the time. How boys can derail you without going off topic. So I was going through a breakup, and I was just basically fed up. And I said to him, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I've got so many clients that I'm trying to satisfy. It's just me. I'm just tired. And I was like, why don't you take your business to Nigeria? And I was just like, what is this man talking about? Nigeria? I've never lived in Nigeria. I have no understanding. I'd visited the first time I was 14. I didn't understand the language. The people were peculiar. It wasn't my natural environment, but there was a deep sense of connection that I felt when I was here. So I think that little bit of connection is what allowed me to entertain the idea of me coming back. So he said, just go and try it. And at that point, my back was against the wall. I didn't really know where else to go. Why not go to Nigeria and enjoy the summer, right? Enjoy the weather for a little bit, have a break. So that's what I did. And when I did come, I saw it from a very different eye. I was now an adult. I was now exposed to the nightlife. I was now able to sort of move around a lot more fluidly and interact with people on a very different level. So I stayed for like 3 months and I did feasibility studies as I'd promised him. And at the end of that feasibility study, I was like, I can actually really do this. The weather's fantastic. The people are amazing. The food was great. So I was like, let me try this out. So that's when I decided that, okay, all fails, I can always go back to London,
Yeah.
right? So I went back home and I said to my mum and dad, I want to move to Nigeria. I want to go and explore this idea of doing business in this environment. And obviously they were like, no, we're not going to allow that. You don't fit in. You stand out like a sore thumb. None of us are there. How do we possibly protect you? But I insisted, and so I sort of safeguarded myself with some cousins and things like that, and said, promise mum that you take care of me, and they did. So they allowed me to come. So long story short, I've been here ever since. I'll do the odd visit back home, but I've been consistently here for the last 8 years.
And how has that been? How is the climate like? Your feasibility studies in the first 3 months, has it matched the past 8 years? Has it been easy? Has it been, has everything come as you planned, or have you faced any curveballs along the way?
Oh my goodness. I can't begin to list them for you. But I have to be very honest though. I came here with the understanding that it wasn't going to be easy because I was coming into a very new environment, right? Yeah. So I already had the resolve that this is not going to be easy, but I'd rather try this than go back to where I was, right? And for me, I kind of saw it as an adventure. 8 years in, I still see it as an adventure. Nigeria for me is full of so much potential and so much opportunity and outcomes and experiences. And again, I think I'll probably speak from a place of privilege because I can always go back whenever I want, right? So I can't take that for granted. But I also understand that I'm here for a purpose. Yeah. There's a deep knowing that I have. There's a deep resolution that I have that I'm meant to be here. So whatever curveballs is thrown at me, whatever experiences I have, yes, in the moments they're not great. But overall, I think I'm having a ball.
Really?
Yes, genuinely, I think I'm having a ball.
That's a great thing to hear a business owner say, because it's been a while since I heard a business owner say, oh yes, I'm having a great time doing business at the moment.
Because I think some people assume it's supposed to be easy. I think some people see other people's stories from a distance and they see the best bits, right? And they assume that, oh, wow, this is a life of up and up and up. And it's a life of luxury and a life of, but I understand better. And I think maybe I was afforded that because I started from ground zero. I'm an explorer at heart, right? If you're not an explorer at heart, you might be jaded by a lot of things. You might be sort of shaken by a lot of things, right? Yes. So I'm an explorer at heart. And I think also because I had the early years in the UK, and because and going back to architecture as well, if you're an architecture student, and I think this is applicable to even those who do an architecture in Nigeria, that stuff is hard. That's not for the faint-hearted. I always say that architecture builds character. Whether you're a practicing architect or you're not a practicing architect, once you've gone through that level of discipline, it never leaves you, right? So I had that as the foundation. Then I've kind of been an entrepreneur since I was 12 years old. I did many businesses from the age of 12. I tried many things. My parents allowed me to have that liberty and that freedom. So my character has always been preparing me for this journey. And I can say that now because hindsight is a great thing, right? I can look back and be like, well, at 12, I was braiding hair. People were paying me for that. I was doing a car wash business. At 13 or 14, I was raising money for charities. At 16, I was selling body shapers. At 18, 19, I was on a motorbike riding around London, going from salon to salon, selling these women products as they were getting their hair done in chairs. So my journey is very unique. It's not, I got up and I started this business and it took off and here I am. I've gone through many, and I remember saying this to you earlier, I've evolved a lot. I'm constantly reinventing myself. This is not the first business that I've started. So I've gone through that discipline already. So for me, it's sort of, it's like, what have I not really seen? There's still yet many things for me to see, but I've seen a lot in the 14, 15 years that I've been doing this already.
But each day you enjoy the process?
At the core, I do. Because at the core, I am an entrepreneur. if I was not doing this, there's nothing else I'd really be doing. Maybe perhaps architecture, but even in architecture, I'll be running my own firm. I wouldn't be, grinding. I would literally be grinding to expand my sort of repertoire of work within that space.
Okay, so you mentioned that when you started the business, especially in the UK, it was just you. So how did you manage the production, the accounting, the marketing? How did you fuse all of that into one person?
So it wasn't just me. Okay. I actually started my business with the boyfriend.
Oh, the one that broke your heart.
The one that broke my heart and drove me into a life in Nigeria. So we actually started it. It was my idea, but he ran with it and he was very supportive. And for the first 5 years, we sort of did this together, and it was growing gradually. So I wasn't on my own at the beginning. I had a great sense. I had a great deal of support from him. And when he decided to obviously leave and the relationship sort of went sour, I continued. Because again, I wasn't just doing it because there was a great knowing that I had. This is something I genuinely wanted to do. And as difficult as it was, I continued. But sort of building a team in that period. And I didn't really begin building my team until after he left. When it was just me and him, it was just me and him. And then after he left, I had no choice, obviously, to then start building a team around the business. And it was challenging. Finding artisans wasn't the most challenging part. I think it was leadership for me. Sort of going from somebody who's sort of used to doing things by yourself or in just a pair, to now bringing in outsiders and sort of knowing how to manage them. I did start off doing the accounting, doing the marketing, built my own website, all at the beginning. So now bringing those people in, it's accountability was a struggle for me. How do I hold people accountable? I've always been assertive. Assertiveness is not the struggle. It's you can only be assertive as far as you're knowledgeable, right?
Yes.
On how to manage people. So being assertive is not, that's not the challenge. It's sort of holding people accountable. Being able to follow up, knowing when to follow up, knowing how to be a supportive boss, trying to understand people management, and sort of relating with people on a human level. I think that in a work environment, forget what you do in your personal life, you can be the greatest best friend in the world, but in a work environment, it kind of humbles you a little bit because you're now dealing with a multitude of different personalities and things like that.
Yeah, and you're constantly trying to be the best version of yourself so that it doesn't at least affect their productivity.
Without actually fully also understanding yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You're just magically meant to know what you're doing just because...
Well, because you're the boss,
yes,
right? Yeah,
just
that's
meant
not
to know
how
what you're doing.
It works in reality.
But you still struggle as a boss to find that balance within yourself, to look after your own self, then look after the people that are working for you. Speaking of people working for you, how have you found the difference between an artisan in the UK and an artisan in Nigeria? How has that been?
A different set of problems. So if I were to go back, the artisans in the UK, I could go to sleep when it comes to the work, and I know that the work will be done well to a large degree, right? There might be a little bit of tweaks or maybe some, droplets of my opinion here and there. But ultimately you go to sleep. They're teaching you, not the other way around, right? But then there are some other challenges too. The pay is incredibly high for what you're paying them. They are not possibly, they have the craft, but in my experience, the level of drive and hunger is probably not as high as here. What I've found with artisans here is that they have their own set of challenges, but I also see a deep desire to want to please here in a weird sort of way. But that deep sense of desire to want to please is also riddled with a lot of challenges. Skill is the biggest. sort of opportunities is also a big one. My guys in the UK have a lot of opportunities to learn second, third generation artisans in their families, their networks. They've had the benefit and the luxury of exposure to a discipline that demands their dedication and time, right? And then, you know, they're able to learn some really good skills that have been passed down generationally, right? And it shows, right? So I guess they're able to command a higher, you know, salary and income and things like that. And very contrast to Nigeria, where they don't have that same level of exposure, but yet they're working from a place of rawness. They're working from a place of need. And sometimes that need can be diluted with a lot of challenges because they're not necessarily always doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, it's just to eat.
It's a survival. You're in a survival mode, and when you're in a survival mode, and you don't have the necessary tools, it can bring a lot of challenges in itself. But what I have also found is that I have a level of dedication here that I never had in the UK. You know, my staff in the UK be like, Demi, we've worked 8 hours, we're exhausted, we're going. I'm not going to convince them otherwise. They're gone. Before I can even open my mouth to speak, they're gone. But here, I can say to my team, we have to deliver, whether we like it or not. This is the work at hand, and we do not have a choice. And the level of dedication for what they're getting in return, sometimes I struggle with it. Sometimes I'm like, wow. Sometimes I'm actually blown away by it, because I've seen the other side. The other side of the pond, right, where the where the privileges are a lot more enticing.
So you're correct. Survival mode is what a lot of people in this part of the world used to work. It's not, I don't know how many carpenters or how many electricians actually want to be carpenters or electricians, or if they're just doing it because I just need a job, right? And there's a clear difference between someone that's doing something for the passion and someone that's doing it just for survival. So maybe that's one of the reasons why the delivery is not as great as you would someone that it's been in their family for generations. Like maybe this is a 4th generation carpenter in a family. The drive is different. The dedication is definitely different. And the output will be different, definitely. But as much as it's not the greatest thing, I think it's also nice that people can equip themselves with skills, or skills around things that they're not particularly passionate about, but they get good enough at it to even earn a living from it. I think there is a little bit of motivation in that.
It's not to be underestimated at all. And that's that spark that I said that I noticed, a willingness to do what it takes, right? That you don't necessarily find elsewhere in the world. I think there's a certain hunger that people have to survive here that I can only admire. And I feel it's the reason why people are still able to sustain despite the odds. In other environments, they probably would have crumbled.
Fair.
You know what I mean? So it's difficult to say, is this person really doing this because they have a deep passion for it, or they're doing it because they want to survive, right? In some communities, in some countries and cultures, people just die. They just stop trying. So there's definitely something that makes them want to keep doing what they're doing. They might not fully understand. And I also feel like a desire to do something sometimes comes from a place of privilege, right? It's okay to have desires when your lights are on. It's okay to have desires when there's food on the table and the water's running and you've taken care of basic human needs. you can now start building my hopes and dreams and desires on top of that, and my passions.
Yeah.
But when those things are not taken care of, I think it's a very privileged thing to say that, you know, people they're not really doing this because they want to. They don't have the privilege to even stop and think about it, because they have to work. They have to put food on the table. And that's one of the things I definitely admire. And I feel like it's a great foundation to truly build something on. And that's the reason why we're empowering our young people at my training academy, because that tenacity shouldn't be allowed to die, right? That hunger and desire to want to learn and survive and build and keep going, because you're hoping for a better tomorrow, it shouldn't be allowed to die.